Well, hello and welcome everybody. This is the Jinn&Tonic show, and we are talking about Islam. My name is Naim Rashidi, or to remember it more easily, Ike. Just call me Ike. And I will host the show today because Stop Spamming has a private thing to do. Maybe he will join us in the Hangout itself, but right now he is on the train and probably has not the best connection. It is the 27th of November 2016, and we are discussing Islam on this weekly show, which starts 1800 UTC every Sunday. Well, the problem is I normally don't really have time for this show, but I will try and keep it alive so that people can talk about Islam. The best way to talk with us is to join the Hangout. Just type in your browser hangout.godless.ch and you will be directed into the Hangout itself. Or you just can listen and type in the chat. Therefore, you use the upper displayed link right now, live.godless.ch. Well, I would prefer if people come and join the Hangout because, like I said, I personally don't have much time to research for the English show here, for the Gin&Tonic show, topics like news or interesting topics at all, maybe history or mythology, whatever. So if people join in and just want to participate into the show, they are welcome. And well, normally the Stop Spamming does his definitions. I will make it as shortly as possible. I personally am a non-believer in gods, meaning this word atheist can apply to myself. Because atheist just has one attribute, and this is not believing in God. End of story. There is no really something substantial behind it or a deeper meaning behind it. It's just not believing in God. Yes. If Stop Spamming joins, maybe he can do his definition things by himself if he wants to. But that is for myself, I think it's enough. Just to mention it has only one attribute, and that it's not believing in God at all. And well, the second thing would be, what is Islam? I also think, like Stop Spamming, that Islam has a very political side of it, meaning mostly out of the Quran. It judges people who in this holy text named Quran, and it makes rules. It makes laws for the people how to behave in the Muslim community itself or with non-Muslims, meaning non-believers. And it is clearly, if you read the Quran, that it has a nation behind it, some kind of nation behind this idea of Islam. It is not only a religion, but it is a political aspect in general, because it tells you how to treat other nations too, and how to behave in the community, and with which leg they should enter the bathroom, like Stop Spamming always mentioned. It has earthly, so to say, earthly rules. It sometimes in the Quran, in the holy text, it explains how the heavens and the hells are, but mostly it is a book for the living and not for really the dead. Yes, like I said, please join, because if nobody joins, I'm pretty much myself here in the show, and it will get very bored. I have gathered some small news, but normally, like I said, I don't have time to gather any big topics at all. But I will talk a little bit from my last Sunday experience, because I was in London and we streamed live for the Gin&Tonic show. What's going on the speaker's corner in Hyde Park in London. To that I will come later. Maybe till then people are joining the hangout itself. Well, let's go to the news. I would say what I have gathered, these small pieces. 2 weeks ago, more or less 2 weeks ago, in Germany, there was a nationwide razzia, and they gathered anything from this campaign named Lies, in German, lies spelled in English, but in English it's just the word read. And they give away Qur'ans on the public streets, etc. And now the organization is suspected to make jihadis and to bring them to Syria and Iraq, and they the police and what was the word? The state attorney, I think it's called in English, pointed out like it would be a really big success, because they coordinated, like I said, nationwide, and looked on 190 sites, meaning buildings of this organization, of this READ organization. And the biggest success till today is the confiscating of like about 5,000 Qur'ans. And those are just simple, normal Qur'ans translated in different language, but most of them are in English. And they act like it is a really, really big success, etc. And also the organization itself is banned. Not only this organization itself, but organization which will come after this organization, meaning they try to ban anything which has to do with this main guy named Abu Naji, which I think comes from Palestine. And yeah, the organization was banned, this READ organization, but already on the same day another organization was formed, just named differently. We Love Muhammad was the next organizations, and now they have to look at it separately, because you can't just ban any organization. So now the whole procedure starts again. It's pretty a useless action, I think, from the police in Germany. Like I said, the biggest success was this confiscating of about 5,000 Qur'ans. So they spend really much money and manpower and big efforts just to confiscate simple translations of Qur'ans. Pretty useless actions, I think. Like you see, I display also the chat, so everybody can read also the chat directly on the screen itself. Can anyone here help me with an English to Arabic translation? I personally can't speak Arabic, but probably others can if you read this and see this, help Enialis out with that. Hello, I am. Who are you? I am.
Hi. Can you hear anything?
I can hear you, yes. But who are you? I am. That was my question.
Say again?
I just see your nickname, I am, and I'm asking, who are you? I am.
I can't choose. So I'm skeptic.
Sorry, I didn't catch it. You broke up there.
I cannot choose stop spamming, so I'm skeptic.
Okay. And the next chat message is from Goat Boy. You should check out an article in the Independent about why more young women in Britain are turning to Salafism. Quite a read. Yeah, I've seen also this news, but I didn't catch it why it really is a big topic, because I don't think in Britain this is really a news itself, that more and more young people in general are being radicalized. I didn't, but like you said, if people want to check out themselves, they can just look on the Independent about these young women. The next news I gathered was about a gay imam in South Africa. I found it interesting because he explains that it is not a real sin in Islam, and that is pretty welcomed in Islam, that you should do everything you can if you're gay, that even it somehow it is a good thing to and it is integral, like he explains, it is integral in Islam to be gay or something like that, which I personally find quite strange in general, because to be fair, the Quran itself, the most holy scripture in Islam, does not say much about gay at all. It just prohibited to act gay, not to be gay, but to act, meaning to have sex with the same sex. And if it's say it is integral in Islam, it's quite a lie, or he doesn't just know his own religion, because there is one verse in the Quran, and I'm displaying it here right now, and I'm reading it. Two who commit it from amongst you, then you shall reprimand them. If they repent and amend, then leave them alone. God is Redeemer, compassionate. And this Imam guy complains about why other scholars and other radicals discriminate them and suppress them, etc., just because they are gay. Rob is also here. Hi, Rob. And he complains, this Imam complains about why others suppress the gays, and I just don't get it. Why he complains? Because they have to suppress them. They have to make the life harder for gays, because the Quran itself says so. So why is a human being gay and wants to be Muslim at the same time? Even the Quran explains that.
You said there were old pizzas in here. I said there were old wraps.
Rob, I'm getting everything from you. I just will mute you. Sorry for that. You have to unmute then. I don't get it why Imam complains about it. That's the main point, because and why he is gay anyway, because the Quran, even if it's not much, but it speaks quite clearly how he should be treated as a gay, or at least if he commits gay sex. That's the main point. To be gay, it is not really a sin, but to commit the same sex intercourse, it's pretty much forbidden. And on the same realm, we have news from Saudi Arabia, because another scholar complains about how Saudi Arabia is planning to put difficulties on transgender people. And it is in the same realm, because I think what this scholar is in general right, that Saudi Arabia should not engage in such things, but well, it is their country, so of course they will do anything they want in their own country, the Saudis and the Wahhabis. And he also explains that it is not forbidden to be transgender, etc., and that the government should not ban anything, and should just make it secure for everybody to join the Umrah, meaning the rituals once in a lifetime around the Kaaba, etc., and performing the Hajj, etc. And I mean, he is right, but in general, are you talking to us? I am, or is this just
Oh shit, can you hear the train announcement or what?
I'm hearing some probably some video in the background. Yes. Where was I? Yes. The Saudi will probably make a ban for transgender, even they don't get a visa to enter the country at all. So not only in Mecca, but the country and all. And this scholar, this Gamadi, however he is spelled, his name, also said here in this little article that, well, nobody should be not allowed to enter Mecca at all. Anybody should be allowed to enter Mecca, which I would find interesting. But this non-Muslims entering Mecca is not new. That's a long time rule since I think over 100 years now. They've done that. Red Alien, no more ladyboy for us. Yes, something like that. Yeah, I have no other news for you guys. So now, if somebody wants to say something, please do so. I am, or Rob. Rob, did you make any progress on Speaker's Corner today, or did you take your time at home? You have to unmute your microphone if you probably want to talk. Probably it's going to be a very short show today. It's sad, but I don't have any other material. So if people wants to talk about Islam, please just join. Hangout.godless.ch is the joining address. Stop Spamming doesn't have a real connection in the train. Just some minutes ago he Skyped me about that. So yeah, I think it's it will be the shortest Gin and Tonic show, because I have no other material. Besides, I will, if nobody wants to talk, I will explain a little bit my experience on Speaker's Corner last week with Rob himself.
I have a connection.
You have a connection.
It's horrible, but I have, and I cannot log into any one of my accounts.
Yeah, but still, I mean, sometimes we hear you. So can you say anything? Because otherwise it will
It's
be
very
short.
difficult because I think I'm saying all the time.
What do you think?
I think I'm cutting up all the time.
Yeah, you're not really cutting up, but the quality is really bad.
So I'll just keep quiet and listen.
Okay, I mean, good. Then I will just talk about my experience last week. Like some of you have seen it, and I re-uploaded a version with a little bit better sound today of the last week's experience about the Jinn&Tonic show live. I went to London and just wanted to see if there is any point in Speaker's Corner to talk to Muslims, or will it be possible to make a good conversation with some Muslims? And in general, what can I say? It was an experience I not really would miss if I don't if I wouldn't have make it, but it was interesting too. So, but if somebody would ask me, should I go there and visit this corner, I would say, well, you can do that, but you would not miss a thing if you don't go and talk to the people there. We started with difficulty about technical issues. My tablet broke on the way there because I stuffed too much things in my bag, and the display I put on the wrong side in my bag, and something just pressed again the display, and the display was broken, and therefore I couldn't use the touch screen because it didn't work anymore. So Rob used then his iPhone, and at least the picture quality was quite good, but just the sound was horrible because sometimes it just catches everything else around the people who are talking in front. That was a little bit strange. Well, I personally had three little conversations. One with Shabir. You can look him up on YouTube. He's quite famous, to say, on Speaker's Corner today. And the other guy is even more known, is Ali, or how is his YouTube channel is, I think, Ali Dawa or something like that. And a random Muslim, he came from Australia. And well, how did the conversation go? First was with Shabir, and it was very, very interesting to see how they don't know their own scripture at all, and try to navigate around the really silly parts of the Quran. I asked him mainly two questions. The first question was just, does he believe in talking ants? This he did directly answered with a yes, and I appreciate this one. So that he didn't make excuses or something like that. He knew, probably knew this story, and didn't want to make any big topic about it. The second thing was, I asked him about if he believed that a piece of meat, a steak, the first word I used was steak, if he believed that a steak could bring some corpses back to life. And prior to his answer, I also explained that he also can use other words like piece of meat or a piece of cow, because it is not important how really you which word you use, but can't join a Raven, can't join the hangout for some reason. I can say everything is right with the hangout link. Rob could join, Stop Spamming could join, so must be on your side something wrong. And prior to his answer side, you can use other words, because it doesn't really change the story or the content of this story at all. The main thing is, if a Muslim believes if a corpse can brought back to life with meat from a cow in general. And he didn't know, it seemed he didn't know the story, so Stop Spamming helped me out there with the number of the surah and the verses in the Quran. And he unwrapped a new Quran. He looked in and saw that there is something in this story, but he didn't see the name, the word steak in his Quran. So he dismissed the whole topic and said like, yeah, you say to me, yeah, you talked about steak and there is no steak, and therefore this is no real issue and things like that. And I just found that very, very silly by him, and dishonest, to say it least, and just say it plain and simple, Jesus fucking Christ. And that was too much for him. Or he used this Jesus fucking Christ by me to end the so-called discussion, because it was not really a discussion, but he used just this excuse to leave the conversation at all. I mean, in general, it just showed that Shabir didn't really know his Quran, at least not this story, and used pretty cheap kindergarten semantics, wording, and I'm finding just a little bit strange, because prior to his answer, like I said, because I knew he would go there and use semantics like that if I don't explain it with other words. And yes, he did that exactly. Still, he did that. I have to say, still he did that, and just complained about the word steak, which is really, really, really a sad thing to do. And it wouldn't be a problem at all, because I mean, then you see him as a pretty useless guy, and somehow also stupid in general, because he has no real talk in this topic at all. And it wouldn't be a problem, but he manipulates young people, and there are young people around him, and we've seen that later with a guy, a black atheist guy named Isaac. I think Rob can correct me if that's his name. And this black guy talked to the young people, and you see that the young people just are very, very naive, to say it least, and believe just that Shabir is quite an eloquent, talking, somehow scholar, and a pretty good intellectual, they think. And that's the main problem I had with Shabir in general, because he acts like he is a big knowledgeable Muslim, but in reality he is just a simple dawa mumbling human being on this speaker's corner. And the next conversation was with Ali. And Ali was, well, he's even more pathetic than Shabir, I personally think, because he has his main thing about complexity and in general. he talked with another guy, and another guy, I think he was atheist, but I couldn't really tell. But Ali just explained something about he's received a piece of paper, which was a receipt, and a bottle of, I think it was some juice, and he that was pretty annoying in general, because 20 minutes they talked to each other, and Ali just embarrassed himself because the other guy just didn't let him go to his first causer or first mover or the most intelligent, because everything is so complex in life, and everything is so big and strange, so that you have to have the most intelligent being there that will create everything out of his almighty intelligence. So that was his main reason about complexity. He didn't get any real points at all. So.
Maybe it's worth mentioning that they always try and go back to a script that they have practiced at home.
Yeah, that's it. You could see that with Ali, because after this 20-minute rambling and twisting of this complexity topic, he then started to talk to me, not with me. That's the sad point. He talked to me. He started exactly with the same point. He put out his paper, his receipt paper, and also the bottle of juice, and just started the whole thing from beginning. And I didn't let him go there, because I said, you've seen me the whole time beside you, and don't you think I've listened to you and already dismissed this thing, and you try it again? And yeah, this conversation didn't go well for him. He didn't wanted to talk about his Qur'an at all. I wanted to see if he understands his religion, and probably that was too hard for him. And he just, after 3 or 4 minutes at most, he just went away or run away, more or less. And I then just realized he probably has no idea what his religion is really about it. Come on, Rob, you can talk. What is wrong with you? Why you don't talk to us? You have to unmute yourself, just to mention it again. Or can I unmute you? No, I can't unmute you. That you have to do yourself if you want to say something. Well, then I tell about the last guy. The last guy was some guy from Australia, and just seems a regular Muslim, more or less. First, he talked with Rob, and I would really know what Rob thought about him and this talk to him. If you can explain then, Rob. My experience with this guy was also very enlightening, because I trapped him a little bit. Okay, that's that I can say. I trapped him a little bit, because I also asked him about this corpse and cow hitting thing, and in general I just asked him, do you believe that a corpse can be brought back to life by hitting it with a piece of meat? And he pretty quickly answered, no, he doesn't believe that. Then I explained that, well, if you are Muslim, you have to believe, because it's in your holy scripture. And I showed him where and explained him the story, because it looked like he didn't know it all too, like Shabir. And all of a sudden, he realized that he got in a trap, and tried to make excuses like, well, you made a general statement, and of course I don't believe that I can go buy a piece of steak in a grocery store and revive people with this. And I explained him very often that it doesn't matter if it's today or 20,000 years ago or whatever, and by whom and with whom and etc. It is in his holy scripture, and of course it makes it then general because it is not excluded or took out of existence just because it's one time experience in the Quran. So it was quite strange how he tried to solve this problem he had, because he had to change his mind in general. In the end, he has to change his mind from no, I don't believe it, to yes, I have to believe it, but it isn't for our time. It is not for our people or whatever. So he got in my trap more or less, and well, the next trap was already also set by Stop Spamming, because Stop Spamming wanted to ask his most beloved question to Muslim: does he condemn categorically that the stoning of people? And this Australian guy also tried to excuse even that, because if it is a self-defense, you are allowed to self-defend yourself, etc. And I then explained this, not really to do anything with self-defense, because it is more or less a punishment and is practiced in at least Saudi Arabia and Afghanistan. And he acted like he never heard of that this would be a real practice in some countries, which was quite strange. And I explained it many times that it is a punishment, and he in the end he realized that he got another trap in himself, and said like, well, if it's of course if it's a judge who explained that and who make the judgment upon the people, then it's okay more or less to stone people. So it is for him okay if a judge ruled for in the cases. You see, Raven, you managed to come in. Hello, Raven. And you are muted. You muted yourself.
Hey, Ike, how are you?
Hi, Rob. Good, fine. You?
Was I not muted when I joined?
You were not muted. I
so
hear.
You probably heard some stuff in the background there.
Right. That's because I'm muted. Would you like to talk about your experience, how you view it, the whole thing, and your discussions in particular a little bit?
Are you talking about when we were doing it last week?
Yes.
Yeah, it was interesting, obviously, to do the live stream. I'm not sure how well that went. I haven't looked at the stream yet, so that was interesting. I thought. You and I chatted afterwards, and I thought your approach was very straight and to the point, which is good. And what I noticed with some of the Muslims, that some of these questions were asked, they just wouldn't engage with it. So do you categorically deny X, Y, and Z? What about, this piece of steak doing X, Y, and Z? I think if one were to try and use those sort of arguments, I think you'd have to build up to it, because unless you're speaking to one of the guys that are regulars there that would have some kind of an answer, that sort of approach with those other sort of Muslims, and I heard you mention the Australian guy, that one, and he didn't want to discuss that, as I remember. He just, well, you're trying to catch me out or whatever the case is, and that's obviously what it sounded like. So I think just my observation, I think if one were to go in with those sort of questions, it either needs to be framed slightly differently or built up to in some way, asking, do you believe everything in the Quran literally, or is there some stuff that's metaphorical, that sort of a thing, so you can kind of understand where they're at, and then you can obviously then asked us, okay, so I want to ask you this question about, this piece of steak or whatever the case may be, because then at least you've built them up to the point. Just to come out and say it, I think, they sort of rejected that. And I could also see you were a bit frustrated in the sense that, you kind of heard of all of these things before. So, you didn't really have a lot of patience to it, and, you just wanted straight out answers. But I thought it was great to have somebody else new there. They didn't know you, so you could go and speak to any of the guys. I don't know, you found it a bit disappointing, I think you said afterwards. And I guess it depends on the approach. I had a long conversation today, which I'll post later, with Sarah, as it happened, on, his claim about, blacks being systemically, racist, etc. So it wasn't a religious claim today, but we had a fairly long conversation. So I think it just depends on the approach. You can go in with a very heavy approach of, do you believe this, or, your sort of thing that ended it with should be, I think cursing Jesus Christ, whatever the case is. That sort of put an end to the conversation, maybe mercifully so. So I guess it just depends on different approaches there. If you're a regular like I am, then I think going in with a hard approach, I'm not sure how successful that will be, especially to the regulars. I mean, you can try it with people that come there once in a while that are not regular faces, but the regulars will, probably tend to avoid those sort of things. A, probably because they haven't got a good answer, but B, just because of the way that it's the conversation sort of starts out. So it depends if you want to get quick answers. I do want quick answers and people that sort of go on to it. I don't know if you saw a video that was posted that I missed. I didn't see it. There was Hamza talking to the black Israelite. So that was up there. And I sort of briefly watched part of that. And the guy never got to a point. It was like rhetoric. I said to them, because he was down there again today, and I said, you just never got to a point. You went on rhetoric there. So Hamza's standing there next to you waiting to have a conversation, and you're going to wipe the floor with the Muslims, which is fine if you can do that. But going into a long rhetorical, rant doesn't seem to get there. And I'm listening and I'm kind of on your side, but I'm not hearing much. So all in all, I think it's the approach you take when you speak to people, and everybody's got a different one. There's no right or wrong. It's just, whatever works for you or doesn't. And I let Sarah speak a lot today. I should have really interrupted more. And maybe that's my downside, is not interrupting more often when people go off on a rant. And then he had some of his followers there that were also, believing in the black racism thing, and they were all chanting in as well. So maybe that's what I need to do differently, is interrupt a lot quicker. But I tend to want somebody to get to a point so that I can actually then answer it. But if they go off on rhetoric and they start jumping around, then that becomes more challenging.
Sorry, what were they chanting? Like black supremacy chants or something?
Yeah, basically, Sarah's not quite as, off the rails as Gary is, which is the guy with the glasses and the iPad. He's kind of really off the rails. He pushes the melanin theory, and when I put that to Sarah today, he claimed that he doesn't believe in that. And the melanin theory is basically that a couple of guys in America came up with this theory that if you've got melanin, the more melanin you have in the skin, the more physically and mentally superior you are. In other words, black people are mentally and physically superior because of the melanin.
I was watching a video with I've taken to calling him Gary Google, because he seems to rely on Google so much. But I was watching this video where he was claiming black superiority, because, okay, if he and a white person went to Jamaica, which one of them could stay on the beach without sun cream? And it was going on and on and on about this. And I just remember thinking to myself, using white people with vampires.
Yeah, I mean, and even if that was true, that and may well be that white people can't stay out in the sun so long. What has that got to do with the bigger claim of being superior? Because obviously his claim, and not so much Sarah, although maybe to some degree, is that they're superior in everything, and of course that's, in my view, hugely fallacious. So they may well be superior as they are in, for example, athletics. So the marathon runners, the short distance runners, those are all, of African origin, because they've got fast twitch muscles, etc., etc. But then you look at other sports, for example, my favorite, badminton, that's all Asians. That's a different sport. So
it tends to be majority white.
There you go. So, there's different ethnicities seem to excel in different sports and different arenas and different things. So, to make the claim, and then of course he made the spurious claim. Oh, well, look at Venus Williams. It just, if we all had the opportunities that whites and everybody else had, then we dominate everything, which I think is complete nonsense.
So Raven, you've watched last week live, or didn't you?
It was funny. I especially loved that one part where you're talking to that bloke and you've got like instant fact checking, and he's like frustrated at not being able to con you. He just walked off saying, "I'm not going to stand here and be a mouthpiece for whatever." It was just so funny.
And it was the Australian guy, yes.
I had this image of stop spamming just as like on Christmas morning, just unwrapping his brand new Qur'an and jumping to the live stream and just with a massive grin on his face, fact checking everything. So actually, no, save it.
I don't know. Once he lost where I think that was in Shabir's case, where about the ant thing, talking ant thing. There I heard stop spamming in my ears, laughing pretty out loud. The rest I don't know. He have to say it himself. How often he laughed at all. I don't know.
I think one of the comments I made, which was not asked, which I was disappointed at, I said, ask Ali Dawah right now to walk to the nearest police station, go up to the desk and say, you know, the next time you find a dead body, right, slap them with a beef burger, they'll come back to life and tell you who done it. Just ask him if he'd be willing to walk to a police station and say that.
Yeah, but we didn't came to at any point with Ali, because he didn't just want to talk about his belief. He just wanted to stay on his one topic about this complex building of life or things in general. That was the only thing he probably learned in his whole life about Islam. To try people to convince that there is somehow a most intelligent first mover or something like that. He didn't want to talk at all about his belief or the Quran. That's really sad.
You know, the interesting thing when it comes to that whole argument about, you know, like, oh, everything's perfectly attuned and we wouldn't be here. I don't know if anyone here is actually up to date on cosmology or physics or anything, but one of the things that kind of struck me is obviously we exist in a particular universe which has particular universal laws, and obviously if they were different, we wouldn't exist. Anything else exists? I mean, obviously that doesn't matter when it comes to whether or not there's a God, but it's kind of an interesting question, you know.
See, the big question with this.
Well, I kind of liken it to a fish. Like, let's say one of those Japanese garden fish, right? Now, they are perfectly suited for Japanese garden because they were bred for that environment. So if we were to imagine that Japanese garden is the universe, and it's all created perfect in a particular way, and if the dial was turned just a bit to the left or just a bit to the right, that fish wouldn't be here. It wouldn't be able to exist. But then if we imagine that the dial was shifted a little bit, and then the universe is vastly different, and we can imagine that fish trying to survive in different environments, like let's say a deep river. It would have it would have like a very difficult time. The simple fact that it can't look up or down. It exists in 2 dimensions because of how shallow the waters is. Or you can imagine the dial shifted 1 more degree, and you've got you add salt into the environment, salt water, and there's no way in hell that fish will be able to survive the universe with other universal laws. But obviously things do survive in there. You got quantities of ocean life. Imagine that you shift the dial more decimals and there is no water. Let's say it's sand or a desert or a forest. You see where I'm going? Like, you keep changing the universe, you keep changing universal law. Obviously, the original universe for Japanese garden is perfect for that fish, and if just 1 tiny little decimal, that fish wouldn't exist. But obviously when we look at these different environments, we see different things do actually exist and thrive.
Yeah, that goes, of course, in the field of fine-tuning in general. So,
and alternate dimensions.
Too, yes. But in general, it goes to the fine-tuning, and that was not caught on video.
The fine-tuning only really counts if that garden fish is so important, being no other way, because I, the Japanese garden fish, I'm so important for me to live, because because imagine the squid, imagine the fucking giant squid that would live if universal laws were different. I wouldn't be able. I wouldn't even exist. The squid would exist, and not me.
I think that's the main observation. That's the main critique against, the fine tuning. It's fine tuned for what? For life? Or what is life? Are you talking about just our life? I mean, everybody will immediately, if you've watched the video with William Lane Craig and Sean Carroll, which is probably one of the better debates, Carroll is very happy to say, I'm happy to say straight away that local conditions would change by a lot if you change the parameters of the fine tuning elements to some degree. What I don't subscribe to, I don't accept, is that then life wouldn't be possible, because you need to say what life is. Well, exactly. Well, you don't know, so you can't really say it's fine-tuned, because all you know is it's almost like it's an argument from ignorance. All we know is our life, and so it appears to be fine-tuned for our life, but actually we don't know what other life there is out there, or whether other life would come about if the parameters were changed. So, for me, that's just good enough.
If other life would come out, if other parameters were changed, particularly if they have the ability to be conscious and self-aware, just think of all those quote-unquote people who could have existed but don't, just because the universe happened this way instead of that way.
Well, yeah. So, for me, the fine-tuning is not a great argument, unless somebody can give us the parameters of what life is, or what life, are we the only life? Probably not. And if there, is it impossible that some other life couldn't come about if the parameters were changed? We don't know that. So really, we can't say that the universe was finely tuned for us. It's like you're quite correctly saying the fish thinking that the whole garden was finely tuned for it, not knowing that actually. Yeah, it seems that way to the fish.
But no, like the fish was perfectly bred. The fish was perfectly bred to exist in it. Yeah. If you have one argument I've heard to explain it, which I think is quite good, is like, imagine you have a crack in a road and it rains and you're left with a puddle,
yes.
And the puddle's amazed at the complexity and how it fits into every crack. And it's like, no, mate, the hole wasn't designed for you. You just happened to adapt to your shape to the hole.
Correct. That seems to me to be the best explanation for us. We were very lucky to be, to evolve on this one small speck of a planet on the very edge of one galaxy of 100 billion, because it was just perfect. And if you run the numbers,
but in a way, where are we? We're actually in like the backwaters of a rather unremarkable galaxy.
Yeah. But
I think also one of the arguments for it is if the universe isn't as it is now, then life as we know it. But okay, when this as we know it, there could be life that we haven't even dreamed of, because it could be different, and then the physical laws of that universe would allow. But I mean, that's also just sort of going with the assumption that life actually has a point when it comes to universality. I mean, if we had a universe which had no life, a dead universe, I'm almost tempted to say, so what?
Yeah, well, I mean, you'd only know if well, how would you know that? Because there'd be no life in that universe. So you're right, it is kind of a so what from that point of view. But when it's pointed out,
not just that though. It's like, I mean, who even knows that the point of a universe is to give life? I mean, life could just be an accidental byproduct, or it could be just absolutely inconsequential.
Yeah,
Maybe the universe does end if we have like a big snap or a big crunch. If one universe begins to die trillions of years from hundreds of billions of trillions from years from now, and all the stars are fading and the universe itself is dying, it's not going to look at us and apologize, is it?
Well, I think that's the difference between us and religious people. They start with a de facto why. Why is everything here? And there must be some kind of cosmic why. Whereas we look at the universe and go, okay, there's a universe. Let's investigate what rather than the why. And I think that's one of the big differences I noticed. They always start with a why. So they smuggle in the why as if, it's a given that there must be a why. And of course, it's not, in my view.
One of the things always gets me is when I have someone tell me that the universe was created just for us, that they're going to have a seat at eternity, eternal, infinite bliss and paradise and nothing like that, and cosmic judgment, and the actual creator of everything, this awesome intelligence we can't even imagine, knows them personally and personally cares about them. And then when I say about important, oh, that's because you're arrogant.
Sorry, I missed you. You dropped off there when you were speaking there.
And then when I say, actually, no, I don't think I'm that important, and then they reply, going, oh, that's because you're arrogant.
So I have to read some lines by Abu Molid because he wants to speak it out loud here in the Hangout acoustically. Cosmic natural selection. In a multiverse, you will always have a small sample of bubbles where the natural constants are just right. Gravity and things like that would not be the same. But in a X number of universes, the constant will be like they are in our universe. Meaning it fits in their universes to say it will fit anyway. Just not how we would explain or how we would absorb these other universes, so to say. If the gravity would be a different one, we just would see probably complete other life forms and complete other way of life. But it should be possible because, like you both said, it is just fine-tuned, or appears fine-tuned for our way of, or our life, so to say. That's of course the right point to make by Abu.
Yes,
carry on. I found it a little bit strange why that was not catched on camera on the stream, but later we talked also to a Jewish guide. I asked him if he is Jew, and he said, well, not Jew, but he's Jewish, whatever that should mean. I mean, either you are Jew or not. And he also brought like the fine-tuning, but slightly a new version of it. Like he has a layer of fine-tuning, this God who did everything right, and he just made the ground substance of our universe, and he let the rest go by itself. Somehow he talked into this layer topic, and I think he thought he's smart. He sounded very smart, but in general, it's still the same useless fine-tuning argument, which doesn't fit in today's view at all, because it just goes to the point that is done for our purpose of life, that this God is here and done everything, even if it's on the lowest layer, so to say, in the fine-tuning level. Doesn't sum it up for me personally. I find it just a little bit embarrassing to still use it just to explain it with layers.
Well, that's obviously he's actually quite an intelligent guy when you sit and speak to him. Obviously, he had his own version of that, where he added something in. He's also got his own version of evolution, so he pretty much accepts most of evolution apart from one or two things. But he's actually more of a panentheist or pantheist. I can't remember which one. And so yes, he's Jewish descent, and he's still sort of Jewish to some degree, whatever that means. But he's got more of a panentheist type view, where the God is we're kind of all part of God type of thing. So that's kind of more his point. What I do notice, though, when I bring up the point about how do we know that this universe is designed for our life, that how can you show that the universe is designed for this life and it couldn't have, no other life can arise. I think when I've brought this up with Muslims, they don't understand this. They think I am trying to posit something. In other words, they think I'm trying to make something up. Maybe I obviously need to be clearer in how I describe this, because they go, oh, well, you're just speculating. I'm going, no, you don't understand what I'm saying here. You are making the claim that you believe the universe is fine-tuned for us, for you, for humans, whatever, or life on this planet, whatever term you want to use. I'm suggesting that in order for you to say that it's fine-tuned, then you have to produce some evidence to say that this is the only way that life could arise. If you can do that, now you've got a glimmer of a point. But otherwise, like we've just said, it could be that if the constants were changed, some other life could have arisen, not humans. It could have been octopus, or it could have been whatever it might be, out there, some kind of Star Trek type race. We don't know. That's the point. But they misunderstand. They think I'm just speculating, a bit like the multiverse, trying to bring in something to avoid the fine tuning. So that's the problem I often see. And the same thing with the multiverse. They just think, oh, you non-believers or atheists, you guys are just trying anything to avoid the God hypothesis. Well, obviously not. That's what cosmologists speculate, and they do so because they have data that points in that direction.
Well, they have to think like that, because if you look at the Qur'an, it gets quite obvious that the world is done, and the whole heavens are just made for humans, and the humans are made to worship this God. So they understand what you mean, I think, but they just can't admit it, that you have some points there and to discuss about it and to talk about it, but they just are not somehow allowed to admit that it is the topic they should talk about it. That I think it's the main reason. Not that they don't get it, but they just are not allowed to go this way.
It's a combination. It may be that there's some people like that, but I think other people just don't understand it. In their mind, they're already thinking ahead and going, okay, this atheist is just bringing up stuff, any old stuff here, so to speak, to avoid the God hypothesis. I wonder what happened if, and I'd almost say when, but if we ever discover aliens, how will that change things? Will they then accept that, there are other creatures out there that God, produced them as well, or is it just for us? And presumably if aliens, arrive on this planet, they'll be technologically, if not in other ways, more advanced than we are. And so, are we then the only, are we the special race, or are these other people that are more advanced than us in pretty much every way, if they can reach our planet, more advanced? So I'll be interested to hear.
It is quite a phenomenon on the internet. They probably would say that those are jinns. They are ghosts. Okay. And demons from another dimension, something like that. I've seen this all the way. I mean, it's nothing. Okay. It's not something they didn't already discussed about and thought about it. They really try to make look it like they are jinns, probably, more or less.
Right. Okay. Yeah, so I didn't get much at Speaker's Corner. I had to leave a bit early today. So, I got a couple of videos there. I got the ranty cowboy guy going on, and then, one or two people challenging him. And then I had this long conversation with Sarah. Because I saw Sarah, and I thought, okay, let's have a conversation. Yes, we agree on a number of things, but there's a couple of things we disagree on. And I wanted to get to his belief things, but he wanted to shoot off and go and, quote unquote, go and have him a few Muslims, or I think was his term, or some words to that effect. So he wanted to run off and go and, attack and debate the Muslims. So he didn't want to, continue. But it was interesting to be on the other end, because obviously, oftentimes we agree with Sarah in his approach towards Islam, but now being on the other side, where I'm asking him about, his view on blacks being, there's systemic racism everywhere, and we're all racist to some degree. And I agree subconsciously, and there's been tests done that, yes, there's some kind of cognitive bias that we have towards our own in-group, that's been tested. So I'm quite happy to accept that. But I just listened to him, and of course he talked a lot, and he was jumping from topic and trying to make analogies. And so when I'm on the other side, of the debate, having a conversation with him, I noticed that he's not staying on the one topic. I mean, he brought up Trump, and there I am having to quote, almost defend Trump in a sense. And I go, hey, I'm not defending Trump per se, but let's stick with what he actually said, because he claimed that Trump was a racist. And I said, okay, fine. Well, what did he actually say? So he brought up the wall of Mexico. And I said, hey, what did he actually say? He said he wanted to build a wall, whether you agree with it or not, to stop illegal immigrants. He didn't say he's going to stop Mexicans. He said illegal immigrants. And in fact, more Mexicans and Hispanics voted for Trump, as it happens, in this election than voted for the Republican last election. When they interviewed them, and you've got it on YouTube, you can go and see them, they go, hey, we don't want illegals coming in here. We spent between 5 and 10 years trying to get citizenship. We don't want people walking across the border here, from the country that we came from to do it. And so, there were these sort of things. And then he would jump from one topic, and then it got onto South Africa, and it was kind of jumping all over the show. And of course, he had a few of his buddies there, so they were kind of jumping in. And at one point, somebody behind me who was not black, but I'm guessing Middle Eastern in some way, was kind of jumping in on the conversation. I turned to him and said, hey, do you want to get in the conversation? I mean, you're in my ear here. I'm trying to have a conversation with Sarah. No, but you're just not getting it. I said, well, you keep telling me I'm not getting it. It's not going to make me get it. So either you want to contribute something here, or can you please keep your mouth quiet so we can finish the conversation? So, I'll post it up later. It was quite a long one.
Did you convince Sarah that blacks are not superior in general? Or?
No, he basically got to the point where, and I stopped filming after a while because, quite a long while actually, it was quite a long video, but I stopped filming because he was equating the law with people that enforce the law. And I said, yes, there are some people out there that will enforce the law, and that's a human bias. I got no problem with that. But what I want is for you to, if you're going to say there's systemic racism, what do you mean by system? I kept asking him, what do you mean by system? Do you mean the law, as in the physical, the writing of the law? Do you mean the people? He goes, no, it's the people who wrote the law. And I went, hey, and he actually brought up, he said, oh, we used to, people used to say nigger, in the 70s. Now we don't do that. And I said, well, is that a bad thing? Obviously, and who wrote those laws in? That must have been white people. So basically, you're saying that white people have taken out these terms and now it's undercover, but yet you're still blaming them. So we're progressing, but you're still blaming them for racism. And so, and he brought up a thing on his phone about the police saying there's systemic racism in the Metropolitan Police, which may be the case. But is there systemic racism across the board? Because that's the claim that he wants to make, is that everybody's racist, and particularly, and then of course, you can't have reverse racism. So when I pointed out that in South Africa, we now have something called affirmative action, which is reverse racism. Oh, that threw him off. You can't have reverse racism because the blacks were always under the cosh, so to speak, with apartheid, and so when it's only right that you turn the tables. In fact, his view was that we should kick all white people out of South Africa. And I said, hey, well, that was Nelson Mandela's view, or Bishop Tutu's view, and I met Bishop Tutu myself, and I agree with them. So they had the view that let's reconcile, let's move forward as a country. No, his view was you should kick all white people out, whether they were racist or not, because in some way they probably benefited. And so, the fact that the tables have been turned in South Africa is a good thing, and all white people should be kicked out. I said, well, and he brought up Zimbabwe, or Rhodesia as was known. And I said, well, how well did it work there? No, but there was infiltration from the US and Western powers. I said, Robert Mugabe ran the country into the ground. And so, bringing up that argument, and kicking all the white people out, well, good luck to you. We've seen what happened in Zimbabwe. But, so we eventually got to a point where we kind of mutually disagreed, because I got to the point where I said, hey, that's what I believe. I go with Nelson Mandela and Bishop Tutu. You claim that we should kick all people out because, all white people are racist, and they benefited. Now it's the black people's turn, so they should have reverse racism, which he doesn't agree with anyway. He doesn't think reverse racism is a thing.
Well, neither do I. Reverse racism is describing racism.
Sorry, say that again?
Well, like just to get technical, I also don't think reverse racism is a thing, because what is reverse racism?
So typically, as we'd understand it, because most people understand racism.
It's racism.
Well, yes, okay, you can say it that way, sure. I guess in the context that he was speaking, he was talking about racism being white people being racist towards black people, and so the opposite of that, which is called affirmative action, certainly in South Africa, I don't know about elsewhere. You're quite right. That's racism in reverse. So instead of saying reverse racism, I guess you could say racism in reverse, in the sense that it's now reversed the roles. And I said to him, actually, I've been back there again, and the majority of black people are worse off, or at least as bad as it was, or worse off than they were under apartheid. The only difference now is they don't have the black and white beaches or black and white toilets or whatever. It's only a small minority of blacks that are in advantageous positions. And corruption is rife, crime is worse. So, I don't see it being better for
one of the interesting things that has come out of the new policies in South Africa, at least that I'm aware of, and I have to be honest, I haven't really looked into it that much. But it kind of seems to be that with white people specifically, there's basically two types of whites, because like historically whites have had all the power and all the influence and things like that. So like the new government now is really focusing on getting black people to sort of, you know, get higher in society and things like that, in ways that you could say discriminate against white people.
Yeah.
So you always seem to have like two classes of whites now. You've got the ones that have traditionally held all the power and have kept all the power and all the wealth, and then you've got these ones that are basically living in shanty towns because of policies in place. They have no way to actually better their lives.
Yes, correct. And the government hasn't made it any better for them either. And so those people are still there. When I go back there, I go into some of those areas, I drive past there, I show my wife, etc. Here, this is the places that I used to go when I lived here. And it's no better for those people. So it's a very small minority of people that are benefiting. And then his claim was, oh, well, you know, who owns De Beers? Well, I guess whoever the owner is he white? I'm guessing he's white. I said, well, who runs big companies? Is it the owner, quote unquote, or is it a board of directors? And in South Africa now, board of directors and other companies are forced by law to have at least equal number, if not a majority, of blacks. And so who runs these companies? You know, and so it was a case of like, he's just looking at the main person who runs a company, or the main people, forgetting that, you know, the companies, etc. in South Africa now are majority black either run or majority black employees. But of course, you've got like 50 million people there. So even if everybody had a job, you're still going to have loads of people unemployed. But the situation...
I'm curious, given the history of South Africa, do you actually think that those policies are needed? I mean, particularly in the States, when you talk about affirmative action, to get like black and minority people, you know, in college and in university and things like that. I mean, given the history of America, when those policies were first implemented, needed affirmative action because it was the only way, if you weren't white, you actually could get a decent education, because there was so much discrimination in society. Whether it's still like that today, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it.
Do you actually think that South Africa did need affirmative action? Like, whether or not it needs it now today is a different topic, but like, do you think that it did need it when this first became a thing?
That's a hard one to say, and I would probably say not in the way that it was implemented, which was to force companies under threat of, you know, tax or other investigations if they didn't do X, Y, and Z, which meant at the time that they had to take on blacks, even if they were not qualified for the role. And the one point that Sarah, I will give him, to a point, made was, well, if they're uneducated, you know, how are they going to be better in the jobs? And but again, Sarah thinks that there were no blacks educated. They were completely, the entire population was completely illiterate. That's not the case. Yes, the vast majority are, or were, or probably still are, but there were a lot of blacks, even under apartheid, who got an education. Yes, they were barred in certain things, no two ways about it, and I agreed with that. But that doesn't mean that you have somebody that's completely inept or extremely bad at doing a particular job and put them in there just because you want to have that sort of thing. What they should have done potentially was get more blacks educated as quickly as possible. So there you could have perhaps done the affirmative action, but bringing it into the private sector, I think, is a bit of a mistake.
Yeah, but don't you think this is apartheid the other way around?
You mean now?
Affirmative action.
Yes, it is now, definitely, especially in the private sector where companies are forced to do that sort of thing.
And but then your hands are tied. You're not allowed to do anything.
You mean the
you're
company?
stuck. Well, you're stuck. If you're in a company and you have more than 3 employees, you're forced to take on a black guy, so you can't expand, because you need to take on somebody who's either like completely either illiterate or untrained or anything like that. But you need to pay them. So there are companies who are taking on people, sending them home just to have them on the payroll, but they don't have to show up at work. The same as what is happening in Qatar, for example, where we have to take locals and we need to pay them money to stay at home because they're not qualified for the job. They're just using up space and coffee and oxygen and blah, blah, blah at the office, so we just send them home. So we need to pay, you know. Your hands are tied, and in South Africa is tying down companies. So it definitely doesn't work. I don't know any affirmative action which has ever worked.
Yeah, I agree. I think education is the thing. So if you can get people educated, get them brought up in a way that they're responsible, they understand what they're doing, etc., brilliant. You know, what some people, and I think
be completely colorblind.
That would be very helpful. Yeah. So it's the best applicant. I'm all for equal opportunity.
Well, what's going on now with what's going on now with the next generation? Because, like, I mean, you made some very interesting points, but like today's children, the children of today, like, is it colorblind with them when it comes to education? I mean, like, if affirmative action does stay, if it's still in place 20 years from now, are we going to be seeing young people in their late teens and 20s that are educated, that are literate?
It's a hard one to know for sure. I mean, I just see what's going on with the videos and stuff, and the young people in South Africa. And again, maybe that's a snapshot, and it's not true of all young people. But again, the things that make news are what some people do, maybe to the extreme. But a number of the the black young people that are at universities are doing the same thing they're doing in the US. So they are marching. They're not going into uni to learn. So they're going there to be social activists. They want to knock down statues of Cecil John Rhodes, this one and that one. They want all these demands. I don't know if you saw that famous video. I think it was UCT, which is the University of Cape Town, where this guy said something. I can't remember the specifics, but he said something at this board, and the board was all black, and it was a student organization, and they got him to apologize for bringing up any comment. It's a safe space, and he can't comment on what this other person was saying. And so they've kind of gone the way of the US, where it's everybody's feelings, etc., etc. We're not here to learn. We're here for social activism. And I think if it continues like that, you're going to have these, as the term is now called, these snowflakes, these people that are fearful of their feelings being hurt coming into the world. And that seems problematic to me.
Which is kind of a point of higher education, to challenge views.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
What was that, Raven?
I said, which is kind of the point of higher education, to challenge views.
Exactly. That should be the place where virtually anything goes. You can be a neo-Nazi, you can be anything. People can shun you and show you why your idea is bad, but to ban speech, I'm very liberal on speech. So unless you are inciting direct violence, everything else should go. You should be able to be racist, sexist, you name it, and we should shun you as in a society and show you why you're wrong, rather than ban you. It's the same with the Holocaust. There's a guy sitting in prison in Austria for saying the Holocaust didn't happen. I mean, this is Austria, supposedly a Western European country, who has jailed a guy. So, as soon as you go down the route with hate speech and you start to encroach on free speech, you're on a slippery slope that, you'll never get to a point where everybody's happy. And the social justice warriors, as they're called, will keep pushing this so that you can only say things that agree with them.
Yeah, nothing should be sacrosanct.
I don't think it will be. I mean, you've even got like young people now going on about how everything's everything's offensive these days, and sort of dismissing it. So
yeah, they get a big shock when they get into the real world, or they come down to Speaker's Corner, or anywhere else where people value free speech. They're going to get a big shock.
The point I just made is that like young people now are actually sort of dismissive of this entire concept. Like, we'll just say, like, oh, everything's offensive now, and just sort of like, fuck it, everything's offensive, so it doesn't really matter what you say. Someone's going to be offended, so fuck it.
Yes, and I think there's a lot of people that are quiet because the liberal left, the very far left, like with the Trump election that I noticed, and on my Facebook, etc., everybody was like, Trump is a racist, he's this, that, and the other. All I want is give me examples of these things. And when you look into it, in fact, there's very little of this going on. And so they've made not that I'm defending him and his policies per se, but just let's be accurate. If you're going to give somebody a label, then you need to have actual good evidence and show why he's saying that. And of course, what happened was a lot of people just kept quiet because they didn't want to be seen as supporting racist Trump, etc. And of course, when they went to the ballot box, nobody's looking. And that's why he got in, because they were sick and tired of these lefties, so to speak, trying to tell them what they can and can't say and who's right and who's wrong. And so they went and voted how they decided, and that's partly how Trump got in, I think.
Or you could make the argument that Trump actually got in because of leftist support.
Yeah.
I mean, because like leftists supporting him, because no one really likes to talk about it, but there is a massive problem with discrimination faced by Orange Americans. If you are if you are a descendant of Oompa Loompas,
Sorry,
even though
who's
it's
that?
not, it's just this societal bias against you if you're a US citizen whose ancestors immigrated to the US from a chocolate factory.
Sorry, I missed what you said there. That last bit.
I just made this joke about Trump being an Oompa Loompa and his ancestors immigrating from the chocolate factory. You know, because he's orange.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one of the things that I actually do love about Trump is the satire coming out of it. I've loved some of the cartoons. I think last week's South Park episode where like you had Mr. Garrison parodying Trump was brilliant, and there's even a comic which has just come out now which is parodying Trump. You know, the Norse god Loki. He's like the god of mischief, god of lies.
Yeah.
You've got the god of lies running for election as the US president, and the comic is actually called Vote Loki, and it's this parody of Trump, but it's like you actually have the god of lies running for office, and it's actually really funny.
Okay, no, I haven't seen it.
But going back to Islam, I actually have an interesting little news bit from 2 weeks ago. So I think most people are aware that in jails in the UK and in other countries as well, there is a bit of a problem with like extremist Muslim Islamist inmates. You know, they're sort of forming gangs, they're harassing people, pressuring you to convert. There was some stories about how non-Muslims were actually showering with like underwear on or trunks, so as not to show their uncircumcised penis and therefore, you know, offend the Muslims.
Really?
But what's going on now? There's a story in the Mirror that that like killers, like, you know, people in there for murder and shit, have set up groups. One of them is called Death Before Dishonor, and it's to protect themselves against Muslim prisoners. And there's another one called Qur'an. And it's like this. People are wondering, we're scared that this race war or religious war is set to explode, with like even murderers fearing for their safety. See if I can find any.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it?
The group call themselves are formed to protect themselves for what they claim is an increasing risk from Muslim inmates. Blah blah blah. Members of the gangs are being recruited from special close supervision centres set up to hold the most dangerous convicts, often violent lifers. A warning to governors is said to have linked 3 convicted murderers to death before dishonor. Now, a source said, there have been top security briefings warning of this organization being set up and focusing on inmates in close supervision units. So there is a serious concern with so many hundreds, if not thousands, followers of Islam in the prison system. At many of our prisons, there is already huge tension between Muslim and non-Muslim prisoners. Clearly, there is deep concern that this group could expand and a conflict would escalate out of all control. And a few different things, sources. Another is the Piranhas gang, which was formed after extremist Muslim prisoners began assaulting other inmates and trying to convert them. The Piranhas, named after the flesh-eating South American fish, are mainly prisoners from Liverpool and Manchester. Gangland murderer Chris Ashton is said to have been handing out postcards carrying a piranha mafia to Muslim convert inmates at Her Majesty's Prison, Longlot and Worcester, urging them to fight back. Sources said the cards had the Ezekiel 25:17 vengeance Bible verse recited by Samuel L. Jackson's hitman character in the cult movie Pulp Fiction. And I remember that. And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to poison and destroy my brothers. And you will know I am the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon you.
Raven,
I remembered.
Who is fighting who? I didn't get it correctly.
You know what? I'll give the link. So if anyone wants to put the link in the description, you can do so.
I just didn't get it. What it was? Jail race war killer set up.
Okay, well, you know how in the prison systems, like you got loads of Muslims basically harassing non-Muslims, trying to get them to convert, and all shit like that. Basically, people have got sick of it and have started forming their own gangs for protection.
In the prison, so other prisoners.
Yeah.
I mean, okay.
Yeah,
prisoners. Now I get. Okay. Yeah, I will put up this link too in the description box later.
So yeah, I can't say that I'm necessarily surprised at this.
Yeah, and of course, no doubt the prison authority will be slow to intervene in case they are labelled as Islamophobic or some other label that gets attached to them. So, it'll
I like
probably
how they said we're worried about a race war and racial tensions. Like, why not just say religious?
It's an ideology, isn't it? Yeah.
Hmm. There was another one I actually had, which is an article written by Jita Sagal, who's a human rights activist from One Law for All, and she's written this article, which is just like an expose how British women are being sentenced to lives of misery by Muslim courts. It's talking about how Sharia courts across Britain are denying Muslim women their legal rights, being encouraged by the British state in the name of increased security. And a lot of shit going on here.
Yeah, I think I saw something like that as well. And there was one article with a woman who was talking about it. How she went to the courts and they basically forced her to go back to her abusive husband.
Yeah, although at least one imam knew the horrific background of her marriage, a delegation from the mosque visited her family to persuade her to return.
That's the
When
one.
that failed, the imam, an old family friend, put more pressure on Lubna to go to the Sharia court to satisfy her devout Muslim mother, who was being intimidated by the wider Muslim community. She eventually went to the Sharia court near London's Regent Park. What happened there shocked her to the core. Clerics who described themselves as judges were to describe her plight at the hands of her violent husband. The court was incredibly difficult. My mother and I were repeatedly told to be silent. None of the information from the civil proceedings, including non-molestation orders, were admissible in the Sharia court. When my ex-husband said he wanted a reconciliation, the judges said I should comply. I tried to tell them about the violence and abuse I had suffered throughout the marriage, but was advised to be silent. And then she got like really intrusive questions about the last time she had sex with her husband. It was crucial to find out when the relationship had ended. She was I should point out that she had originally went to like a non-Muslim court, like just a secular British court, and she got like a restraining order against him. She got like another address, and the Sharia court just wanted to know all these details. She was forced to disclose her address, give it to her violent husband, and it's just a massive clusterfuck.
And then wasn't it her mother as well who got ostracized by the community because she was sticking with her?
Yeah, I think that was something like an old woman as well. Where is it?
Yeah.
Just have an example. Most sickening thing. The sickening thing is that the spread of Sharia law has been aided and abetted by the British state, which sees acceptance of these shadowy courts as a way to appease what they regarded as non-violent extremists. In doing so, Britain has embarked on an unsavory Faustian pact in which the rights and safety of Muslim women in this country have been sacrificed in the name of security.
So
this actually kind of corresponds to something I put together for a Jinn&Tonic show a while ago, where Theresa May, who at the time was the Home Secretary, announced an independent review into Sharia law as part of the government's counter-extremism strategy. But instead of actually appointing or anyone who actually knows anything about human rights, because that was a point of it, she actually appointed a theologian, which was just like, it was two imams, I think, as advisors to the panel. And sorry, yeah, it was chaired by a theologian. it's just so stupid. Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you appoint like a human rights lawyer or something?
So in general, in the UK, it looks like the state justice doesn't care for Muslim women.
Well, it
Do I get
doesn't.
it
I mean,
right?
Sharia courts are being moved by local councils and the police, who see them as valuable bridges to the Muslim communities. I remember a while ago, a couple of months ago, I remember just mentioning on the show that there was two women. I think one of them was from Yorkshire. One of the women was actually rang the police because she said, my extremist husband is going to kidnap our children, is going to take them either to Pakistan or to fucking ISIS. And the police said, contact the Sharia Council. And there was another who was actually in an abusive relationship with her husband. And again, contacted the police. I think again this was in Yorkshire, and said, I'm a domestic violence a victim. I need some help. I need the law to be on my side. And again, what did the police say? Contact the Sharia Council. It's really, really, it's scary. It really is scary.
Yeah, of course it's scary. If the police doesn't take you serious and on your issue and domestic violence serious, and just say, go to those people who will anyway say it's everything all right because your husband has more rights than you. Yeah, that's really something scary, of course.
It's how often you hear about it, particularly like when you have like people that have been abused, like particularly like you know, either people that are vulnerable for whatever reason, or children, and then when they actually manage to get the courage to go to the authorities, to go to social services, they're just they're put in contact with quote unquote community leaders and imams and all that shit, and so they're being handed right back to their abusers. If they were white, it'd never happen. If it was like a white kid or a white woman going through that, police and social would be kicking the door down. But oh, they're Muslim, so you know, we have to be cautious. We have to respect community feelings. You know, we have to make sure that they don't have the same lawful rights and protections that anyone else would have.
Wasn't that sort of the same with Rotherham as well, with the grooming and that stuff for 10 or 14 or however many years it was? Nobody wanted to say anything.
You know, considering the case was actually a minimum of 1,400 children in just one small town in England, that basically translates as one child a year in the same town since Muhammad walked the earth.
Yeah.
That is the scale of the abuse.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, some of the what was coming out there was horrific. You know, there was one girl, she was about 12 or 13. She had petrol poured on her, and someone playing with a lighter saying to burn her alive, she told her family. There was another saying like, "Oh, I'll rape and kill your mother." There was a girl who was, I think, like raped with a vodka bottle. There was I remember this one girl who was about 13 or 14. Her dad actually came round to try and rescue her, and he got arrested. It was a systematic cover up, and again, it was just found that so much of it was the police and social had done this because they were afraid of being called racist.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that it's really changed, you know, all that much. Anyway, on to a lighter or different topic. If you still going with this one?
No,
Well, we can do.
If you have something else, something that
Well,
will
I don't
bring
know
a
if you
smile on our face, go for it.
Well, kind of a smile in the sense of talking about the things that we recorded last week, because I put up the one with Ian talking to Shabir about where is your God? Can you see him? I don't know if you mentioned that or talked about that one, which I thought was quite amusing because you were filming on the other side there. You can see you in the video.
Yes.
You've got that one, I guess, as well.
Yeah, I've re-uploaded particularly this part with better sound, so everybody can go.
Cool. Yeah. because of course it should be attempted to read something off or quote something out of the Quran and then shifted it to, well, where's your mind? You know, can you see your mind, type of thing, and that's you were obviously there, you know, and I thought that was quite amusing. And Ian kind of stuck to the point, although it's not a point I would have necessarily asked, but he sort of stuck quite dogmatically to, so where is this God of yours that you talk about, you know? And then they wanted to try and shift the burden of proof, so to speak, and go, oh, well, where's your mind? You know, I suppose trying to infer, oh, well, you believe in something you can't see. Well, of course, that analogy is extremely poor, but it was an amusing exchange anyway, because Ian just wouldn't, he just kept interrupting all the time. He does exactly the opposite of me. So I would let him talk, whereas Ian was just interrupting all the time. And you can hear the people around there getting quite annoyed with Ian not allowing him to continue on.
Yeah, and in this part I only found really pathetic to say, because he complained that other people are including themselves in discussion he had prior to this, Shabir and the other guy. Now he is acting in the same way he complained about it, meaning just jumping in and screaming out loud and thinking he made any real points. That
who are you referring to?
Exactly into this conversation with Ali, who complained, where is your mind?
Ali, yes, yeah. I actually said to him, you might hear it off camera. I said to him, oi, you know, let them finish here. Why are you jumping in here and trying to get involved here?
Exactly.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
what I find very strange, because he complained prior to that.
I don't think Ali's a bad guy. I mean, I've spoken to him a couple of times and stuff, but I think his ego gets the best of him on occasions, especially when he's got some of his Muslim buddies around. Then it kind of, like, the ego takes over and he wants to kind of show off a little bit. And that's where he, you know, sort of tries to get on a bit of a high horse. And like he started with me as well, or attempted to, you know, trying to caricature my position. Oh, you atheists just believe everything came from nothing. I said, really? Is that my position? Why don't you ask my position? Don't mention, because I can tell you, you know, I can caricature your position. You believe in a pedophile who flew on a winged horse and split the moon. You know, if we can all do the caricature bit, but how useful is that if we're going to have a conversation? So I think, you know, but there's been other occasions where, you know, he's been a decent guy. I've seen a couple of videos, not necessarily that he's got a decent argument per se, but just that he's been a decent guy in the sense of, like, you know, saying, hey, let's not do this, let's be fair, whatever. But I think it kind of blows hot and cold with Ali. You know, sometimes he is, other times it's like if he's got buddies around, then he'll tend to show off a little bit because he's quite well known there now. And so, you know, it's the mood that you're catching him by the look of it.
Just to pick up on what your point about you believe in a pedophile who did such and such, you know, like the common argument against that is that it was normal at the time, right?
Yes, yeah, I heard that today actually, yeah.
I actually decided to look this up because I was quite curious to see if it was actually normal. And obviously, like with royal families, you get loads of stories about marrying at 12 and things like that. But I was wondering about, like, you know, outside of royalty, how common it was. And I actually looked up European marriage rates going back to the medieval times. And there actually is some fluctuation. But what actually happens is for more than 1,000 years, at least in Europe, it was actually normal to get married anywhere from like 15 to 27. You know, usually it was your late teens to mid 20s you actually first got married for the past 1,000 years. So that whole argument of it was normal at the time, at least in Europe, that's actually bullshit.
Yeah, but I think they are specifically referring to Saudi Arabia at the time, or Arabia, or whatever it was, that's what the tribes were doing prior to Muhammad. I think, because you're right. Yeah, but
was it though?
I don't know. No,
but actually wasn't, because people accept it, because people even accept that this is the case in Europe. You know, they point to certain things like, like Queen Victoria, she made it so that 12 was the legal age. And look at European royalty, they were getting married at this age and that age. So the idea is that sort of all around the world, I mean, like, you know, ancient Greeks and Romans had sex with young boys. And so the idea is that back then it was normal and sort of universally normal. Whereas I'd actually just looked into it and it's not.
Yeah, but even if it was normal, let's assume that it was normal for everybody. that still doesn't make it right today. And of course, if they are promoting something that's timeless, then we've got a big problem there. If you say, oh, it changes with time, that's a different story. But they're claiming, if you follow Muhammad's life and you're going to follow him as an example, then obviously you're going to follow what he did. And so we're still able to point that out today, that's wrong. And why is it wrong? Because of consent. Children can't consent. They don't have the brain power to understand the decisions they're making, et cetera, et cetera. And so, even if Europe was 9 years old, 8 years old, whatever, which as you say it isn't, that still doesn't make it right today. And we can criticize today because they are making the claim that it should, everything is timeless. And so that's the reason we bring this up. And that's the reason why, we can, label it pedophilia now.
But if you follow it from a point of view of a believer, it actually becomes a bit more sinister, because we have to believe that, Muhammad had a direct line to God. So we've actually managed to figure out now that, we have very good reasons for not having sex with children. Not only the lack of ability to consent, but also psychological reasons, physiological reasons, biological reasons. I mean, the damage that you can do to a child's body. I mean, one of the interesting things about Aisha, Muhammad's child bride, is that she never had children. And I always wondered if there was a simple fact that it's like a little 9-year-old being penetrated by, a grown man's penis. Maybe it actually damaged her to the point that she couldn't have children. And this is very possible. We know the damage that comes with having sex with children. So considering that Muhammad had a direct line to God, God already knows this, perfectly aware of the damage and the violation that happens to the bodies of children who are molested by adults, particularly adult men. And he's fine with it. He's absolutely fine with it.
There was something wrong with Muhammad anyway, because he had children in the beginning with Khadija, but he never had any children after that.
Yeah, it probably was impotent. But the thing I wanted to mention is exactly this discussion came up with a Muslim guy and Isaac, I think is the name of the black atheist.
Oh, yes, Isaac. Yeah, he's a rhetoric guy, fun guy. Yeah.
And the Muslim guy said, well, in the end, more or less, he said, did Aisha die? No, then everything is fine. That was his main point about why it is okay that they had sex and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I could show you a picture of a Yazidi sex slave who's pregnant at 8 years old. Is she dead? Not last time I checked. Oh, that's fine then.
Yeah, that's
8 years old, but she's not dead.
That was his excuse. Did she die? No. Then everything is fine. Why you are complaining about it?
Okay, I mean that's like scraping the bottom of the barrel. I typically hear people say, "Oh, yeah, but she was mature. She was the most mature woman at 9." I mean, how do you know that? Firstly, but even if that was the case, that doesn't mean her body's mature, unless you're claiming that she's somehow miraculous as well. But yeah, I think scraping the barrel, as long as she didn't die, it's okay. I mean, I would seriously, question that guy's morals. I'd want him to keep him away from anybody that I know. That's for sure. If that's his view on things.
One little thing was mentioned in the chat because to be a little bit fair, just a little bit. I mean, the lifespan at those times in the 7th century would be, of course, way shorter than today. That's true in general, but still, that doesn't excuse the so-called fact, because we don't know if Muhammad really existed at all, that it is okay that a 54-year-old grown penis man entering a small girl vagina would be a good thing to
yeah, it's also actually it's actually not true what you just said, that that life expectancy was different. People weren't just reaching 40 and dropping dead. The whole idea of life expectancy is a calculation. It's you know, it's how many children die, what ages do they die, things like that. It's cuts, wounds, infections. But if you can actually make it like 15 or 18 or whatever, you're pretty much set. You might die in battle, you might get murdered, just like any of us might be murdered walking down the street today. But people were still living and dying anywhere between the ages of 60, 70, 80 years old. So you know, it's not like our actual lifespan was shorter 1,000 years ago. But
that is not really true, because you still don't had the same food like today, the same medical issues like treating people in hospitals, etc. to expand his lifespan.
Again, that's not really the point. I mean, most of when we actually calculate span of a particular society, we usually go on how many children die, and we sort of like it's a mathematical equation. But again, if you actually do manage to reach adulthood, it's very possible and very likely that you'll die at a ripe old age of, again, anywhere between 60 and 80.
I think that's the point, Draven, that you're making, which I think is the valid one. As long as some people were able to reach the age of 70 or 80, that means that not everybody was dying at 40.
And most did if made it past childhood.
But yes, as a general rule, if you took all of your calculations into effect, yes, then generally the population was living a much shorter lifespan. But there were people who were living much longer, which means that people were capable and indeed did live to 70 or 80 years old. It's just that the majority maybe didn't, as we do today, because of our medical breakthroughs, our health, etc., etc.
Yeah, but again, this is just like if you actually make it past childhood, there's every chance that you're going to live to a ripe old age. I mean, if you look at some societies, like let's say certain Germanic tribes back in the Dark Ages, you know, pretty much half the population was 15 or under, right? If you made it past 20, again, there's every possibility that you could live until you were 70. I mean, obviously they were a warrior culture, and what they actually wanted to do was die in battle. You know, it was considered honorable to die of old age. It was called the straw death, and it was looked down upon. But again, if you actually look at the statistics of like half the population was under 15, then because of that, the average life expectancy is much shorter than it was today. Even though if you actually made it to about 20 and die in battle, again, it was perfectly normal to live to a ripe old age.
Yeah, and I think I was just going to ask Ike, you know, you read that comment. Was the commenter basically inferring in some way that because the life expectancy was much less, therefore in some way it was okay, or it was in some way not as bad, that young children were, you know, being taken as brides? What was the point of the comment, basically saying that people have got a shorter lifespan?
I don't know who made this comment. Let me see. I think, yeah, Goat Boy did make this comment. Wasn't life expectancy lower than at this time? I personally think, of course, and well, what can I say about it? I mean, you have to. I think at this time you have to expect that the chances are that you didn't really reach a high age, because you have to go at some point as a man into war or something like that. So you have at least to marry at a young age, and same goes for a woman, because I mean, there is some little point, but I think that's not a real excuse to say.
Well, I mean, women presumably weren't dying as quickly as men, because they weren't in battle. So even if you were a young man and you wanted to get married, there's no good reason that I can see that you'd choose a child. You could choose a young woman, because women were, you know, presumably available. It wasn't like there weren't enough young women over the age of 18, let's say. And so even if you were a young man, you could still have chosen a woman of your age. So taking a child even then still isn't a defense for going, well, you know, because we have a shorter lifespan, therefore we've got to choose young children as our brides.
I agree with you. I mean, of course, I agree with you there. But the thing is, at that time, you pay for your woman. I mean, you see that in the Quran. And if you pay something, you want something very new, very fresh, of course. So,
Rob, don't you think it's also cultural? Because I remember in South Africa, girls were much younger. I used to enjoy, because girls got married when they were 18, 19, 20, and then by the age of 25, they were disillusioned and well, divorced and ready for ready for fun. I used to like that, so I think it was more of a cultural thing.
Are you meaning that in the time of Muhammad, it was a cultural thing that they married 9-year-olds, 8, 9-year-olds?
Exactly.
Yeah, it could well be. It could well be.
6-year-olds. Maybe it was 12-year-olds, but with him they made an exception and made her 6. I don't know why they did.
You're absolutely right. It could well be a cultural thing, and that's the claim that Muslims make. Well, hey, that's what was going on prior to Muhammad coming in anyway. That could well be. But us looking back now, we can judge that.
It.
Sorry?
Then accept it.
Well, we can look back now, but we can say, hey, that's wrong today, because the whole point is that they claim that, following Muhammad's life is the thing to do. And otherwise you've got to pick and choose which bit you follow and which you don't. So either they follow all of it or they don't. And if they don't, why are they choosing not to do certain bits? So if Muslims said, what Muhammad did wasn't the right thing, we wouldn't choose to do that, I'm fine with that. But don't claim that it was okay or make some kind of excuse, because we can look back today and we've got a lot of technology and history and so forth. And we know that, as everybody else has said here, that it's wrong to have any sort of, sexual time with minors for various reasons. But you're right, and I think that's the other thing, getting married very young, when you haven't experienced much of life. And I used to actually be a relationship coach, interestingly enough. So I used to teach people, how do you attract the right person? How do you stay with them? Because it's all very well, attracting somebody, because I was competing with, at the time, the pickup artist. And I'm not that sort of person. Hey, what do you say to pick up a woman to sleep with her? There were other guys doing that. My position was, okay, so how do you show up as a guy that you can attract the right person that you want and then have a long-term relationship? That was my thing. So obviously I was looking into, these sort of things and what people do. And I noticed that young people don't have a lot of experience in life. So of course it's almost like you've never been to school and you're now tossed into a job where you've got to understand mathematics. It's the same in relationships. You've had no experience of life, so you get married early. You find out that you've got the wrong partner because you don't know how to select. Nobody teaches you or helps you with this. So you just follow your parents or other people. And of course you've got big challenges, in a very short space of time, as you pointed out.
Fine. So do we have any other topics we need to mention, or can we say we have talked enough for today? Nobody.
Sounds like we've had a good conversation. Well done for your first hosting, Ike. You've obviously seemed to have pulled it off with relative ease. I missed the beginning. Are you starting next week at 7, or is it still 6 next Sunday?
I have to look with the former dictator. If the dictatorship goes to me in general, like in Cuba right now, from Castro to his younger brother or something like that. I have no clue. We will have to look at this up this week. But
thank you very much for jumping in here and doing this. Really brilliant. Thank you very much for that.
I'm thankful that at least some guys came up and made this show longer than just 30 minutes there. Thank you for that. Well, do you have an hadith I should read out loud, or do you want to do it yourself? I mean, I can just take any hadith at all. Let me show here.
128.
Stops, you're coming through quite softly. I'm not sure if you're on the plane or somewhere where the internet's not so good, but you're a bit slow there.
He is probably still on the train, yes.
Ah, okay.
So Hadith, Sahih Bukhari, let's see.
Quick question, just before you do that, is that the most sacred and accepted hadith is Al-Bukhari? Everything in there Muslims take as acceptable?
Not every Muslim, but the Sunnis more or less have to take it as authentic. That doesn't sahih mean authentic hadith. So it's
there are many who want to make it part of scripture.
Okay, so good to know.
So let's see which chapter we can. Food and meals. Let's see what we got here. Food and meals. Choosing here 7. Why not? And just read some hadith. Maybe we can learn from it and be better human beings on this planet. 347. Narrated Anas bin Malik. A tailor invited the Prophet to a meal which he had prepared, and I went along with the Prophet. The tailor presented barley bread and soup containing gourd, but I don't know what gourd means, and cured meat. I saw the Prophet picking the pieces of gourd from around the dish, and since then I have kept in licking gourd. So
liking, I think it is.
Liking, yeah, not licking, liking. So, well, there you have it. If the Prophet likes something, you have to like it more or less too, because it makes you a better human being. That is, I think, the lesson here.
Maybe Stops can tell us what it is.
Exactly.
What is gourd? Well, I have no clue what gourd is. Let us Google it shortly for everybody. Gourd. Okay, that's a gourd. Some kind of pumpkin or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Everybody has to like gourd if they are Muslim. That is the lesson, I think. Anything else anybody wants to say?
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thanks very much.
Thank you too. Bye, everybody.
What happened if we have something else to say?
Okay, Raven, of course. Why not? I mean, it is Raven. Raven has to say something. Go on.
I just wanted to mention that Abbas has ordered Palestinian flags to be set half-staff to honor Castro.
Okay. Why not? Yes.
I just thought that was worth mentioning.
Okay. Oh, fine. Why not? Well, thank you. That was for the Gin and Tonic show. We have to look how it will be next week. Just stay tuned. 7 o'clock UTC or 6 o'clock. We have to look it up.
So how do you enjoy hosting?
I mean, I do this hosting on the German side. That's no problem hosting itself. But my English, I have always to think the right words and search for it in my head. So it's not very easy in English. But I mean, I can do it. The other thing is I have no time to gather news and topics. That's my problem. If you have something, just
anyway,
send me a
next
message.
week.
Till next week. Bye, everybody.